Hi, very good morning to you. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. I want to get straight into a couple of things this morning with you guys. I'm just going to briefly tell you about the schedule for the next couple of days, because you know we're on the 17th in just 2 days time. So on the 16th we'll do a look at some of the anomalies like the earthquakes, the volcanic eruptions that are taking place currently. We'll monitor the CO2, atmospheric oxygen, and update the website with regards to Earth's health at a glance. I've got some data I've got to put up later on the website if you're interested in having a look at that. Some more data from one of our superstars, Kendall, in Canada. He sent us his magnetometer data. I believe he's also sent his muon data, so we can update the Earth health at a glance page tomorrow. Why are we looking at Jordan B. Peterson? It's because, like any professional that goes against the grain, seems to be a little bit too far right, they go straight out for them. And especially if you don't agree with politicians and other areas of mainstream driven media. I say it's driven because it's purposely selected for a specific mental reaction. What you got to realise is mainstream media very highly relies on psychology now, in the way it delivers its story in particular ways to get your emotions boiling in particular ways. And that's why mainstream media is now starting to lose a lot of its credibility. But even though it is losing its credibility, not too fast for my liking, I'd like to see it lose its complete credibility and no one watch it at all, and no one pick up the newspaper, because then these government politicians around the world wouldn't have a voice in our ear for any reason that they wanted to promote any of their agendas. So getting back to Jordan Peterson, what's happening to him? I'm not sure whether it's a university in Toronto or I know it's definitely one in Canada. I'm going to go out for this guy. On the basis or the pretext of there's been around about 13 complaints made against him, which are all ridiculous and just taken completely out of context. Yet they are trying to take his professional license off him to stop him practicing as a professor in psychology. And like I say, it doesn't just happen to psychologists or mathematicians, or it can be climatologists. We've seen also get through onto the bonfire, as well as scientists. I've had this happen to me. I've been bullied by this platform. They've stopped me making any revenue off adverts. Some people say to me, why don't you put your adverts on? I physically can't. I haven't been able to do that for over a year now. If you remember, I got a strike last December and I got another one this December, and that doesn't expire until I think the end of March. So and I know what'll happen then. There'll be something else, something else. But my point is this, is that today there will be thousands of people watch this video, and thousands of those people won't do anything about this what is taking place. And it's very serious, because if we continue allowing the freedom of speech to come under attack, you won't be able to say nothing in the future, because everything will be put on the block list or the red list, or the go after list. Your name will be put on there. And this is what's happening to people now in professional arenas, in different sciences and in other areas. They're being scrutinised for having a different view. Can you believe we live in a world like this? Our grandparents that was alive, and I know they're very few and far between now, that was alive in the 1930s, mid 1930s to the late early 1940s, would absolutely recognise what's going on here, because they remember in their history at that time what the Nazis was doing with respect to burning literature, and then moving on to stopping people physically talking about certain things they didn't want them to talk about. The propaganda machine was in full swing, and it's back in full swing today. You have to ask yourself the question, what is in the interests of platforms like this that we're on now, TikTok, Instagram, what is in the interests in blocking the talk and the conversation, regardless of how off the wall it might sound to somebody else, because we don't all share the same ideas, but regardless of how it might sound, you know, they shouldn't have their opportunity to speak removed. And that's what we're seeing happening, because mainstream governments are realising that these platforms are just like newspapers and news channels. People subscribe to them, and we have people like, you know, Joe Rogan, even Jordan here, you know, that have millions of subscribers. They know that they've got ear holes to whisper into, and they don't like it, the mainstream media, because it takes, you know, the focal point off their psychopathic agendas that they've got. And I think we need to do more about it, and not just a few of us. You know, what needs to change is changes with larger numbers of people, because this is getting to a point now where it is very quickly, and it has already for a lot of people, got to a point where it's damaging people's lives. I'm just going to leave the topic of Jordan now, because I if I could support him, I would. You know, I don't like what they're doing to him. He's already had this back in 2015, 2016, and it left him, I believe, for quite a prolonged period of time, you know, physically and emotionally drained, and I do believe he might have even been a little bit depressed at the time. So, you know, this sort of thing, this pressure that these organisations like universities that are being pushed to attack him with these stupid comments that, you know, he supposedly have made. And if they are, you know, what's happened to freedom of speech? And, you know, what's also happened, let's not just talk about the freedom to voice your opinion. You also have an opportunity to listen to what you want as well. If you don't want to listen to something, then switch the channel off. If you don't like what someone said, don't go back. That's what I say to people on my channel. You know, if you don't like what you hear, you don't have to hang around here. So, you know, we'll leave the topic of this. I just think this is another example of what is taking place on a larger scale. I've been a victim of it, so I know what it's like. I'll probably, because of the things that I've talked about in some of my videos, and I'm just sharing my ideas, like in the last couple of videos, I'm just sharing some of the things that I think are really strange about, you know, numerology, numbers and things like that, and why we see these things, not just in crop circles, you know, this geometry, we also see it on the North Pole of Saturn. So I find it interesting to talk about it, and I know there's a large number of you guys out of the 56,000 subscribers that we got now that like it as well, because years ago we used to talk about that stuff a lot more, and I just like to now and then, you know, jump in on that topic. And if there's anything new that I've come across and, you know, I find of interest to you guys, I'd like to mention it. I forgot at the beginning of the video to say thank you to those few people as well that have been supporting us on Patreon, and, you know, on the PayPal link down there in the description. And if you want to chip in a few bucks on there, you know, it would be greatly appreciated. And it would be wonderful, absolutely wonderful, to see a few more people, you know, coming together here and stepping up to that line and saying, you know what, we're not going to stand by whilst these governments and these organisations, you know, bring Gene down, you know, bring our observatory down. So it'd be nice to see a few more people. Okay, I just want to touch on a few other subjects in relationship to, you know, the targeting of specifics, and just give you a, you know, a little ballpoint arena of what's going on in our world, because we need to do something about it, guys. We really do need to do something about it. So let's get on with something else. So another thing that these people, we know who they are, that are going out after is CO2. And the facts are here before us. You know, the total amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is 0.4%, and the amount that man puts out is 0.012%. And that just amounts to pretty much nothing when you compare that naturally occurring CO2 is 99.9% of that 0.4% on the left-hand chart that you're looking at here. But they're making trillions out of it, and they're destroying people's lives over it. And all this they need to do is just keep to the, policies. Keep blaming CO2. Whether people like me come up with the obvious evidence about what they're saying is nonsense, it's regardless. If they keep the mainstream media driving their agendas, they will keep most of the people fast asleep, unaware of really the truth of what is going on. And if people like me pop up on the radar a little bit too much, they go after me. This is exactly what they're doing with Jordan Peterson, because we're coming out and we're telling people the truth. The reason why your energy bills have doubled, remember this, it doubled not just in one country, which would have been more natural, if there was something that affected the the economy in a country, and it suddenly inflated the cost of fuel and energy, then you could understand it. But this was a synchronized global event. Energy prices have gone up everywhere around the world, and they've done it for a reason. Because when we go over to the natural gas screen, which we're going to do and have a look a little bit later on, let's do that now. So I know for a few of you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're looking at the National Grid Live. This is where Great Britain, England, Scotland and Wales get their electricity from. We do export a tiny little bit. In comparison, it's nothing really what we export. We don't really import a lot either, for that matter. But you can see where we get our majority of our energy from. Coal, I've noticed in the last 3 months, we're starting to fire up the coal plants, even though we're only producing 0.9% of energy coming from coal. They have started to use the coal again. Gas is at 13%. But look at the renewables: solar, wind and hydroelectric. Not so much the hydroelectric, but look at the solar and the wind, where the energy is coming from for that. 76.1%. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you cook the books and pull, the curtain over the general public so that they can't see what's going on behind it. Because I'll tell you exactly why the renewables is at 76% now. Because of putting up the prices, they drive demand down. So if you had, like they did, between 5 and 10% of your energy being created by renewables, solar and wind, about 4 months ago, and you put the prices up 3 months ago for the energy, making it almost impossible for people to afford to buy gas and electric for their homes, as well as foods that we'll talk about at a later date or a bit later on in this video. What you will actually do is make your 5% to 10% that was generated with renewables 4 months ago look much, much better, because demand's gone down. But that means that you don't need to create much using gas, you don't need to create much energy using coal. But if you've got 10% 4 months ago, that will jump up significantly, and that's what we're seeing. The only reason why renewables have jumped up, and I know, David, you're an advocate, and Robert, you're an advocate at looking at the national grid with me, you will know exactly that what I'm talking about right now is exactly right. What they did was they reduced the demand for people to buy because people can't afford it, and that made the renewables look even more impressive. That's why it's jumped up so much. So if you was watching this 4 months ago, you was looking at the energy being created by these renewables at between 5 and 10% on a good day, if that. And now look at it. They've made it look like, we're achieving that goal. 2030, we're going to hit net zero. Well, they can hit net zero if they want. I'll tell you how they do it. They just whack up the energy prices even more for people, and more people won't be able to buy it. And then they can create 100% of their energy by renewables. And who will be the only ones that will be able to afford it? The rich. Which means everybody else gets barred. And this is what the psychopaths do these days. And when people like me call them out on this cooking of the books, where they're getting the energy from and how they're achieving it, they don't like it, and they come out after us, just like they've gone out after Jordan Peterson for talking about politicians, you know, and more in particular about the truckers and how that incident was handled, you know, and that they was threatening, believe it or not, to get social services involved, because what they were saying is that the protesters that took children, the children were in danger because they was involved in a protest, and what they was trying to do along with the police is enforce taking the kids off the protesters. That is not a democracy in any third world country. That is not a democracy we had 25 years ago. This is a new behavioural pattern. It is absolutely narcissistic. It is absolutely psychopathic, just as Jordan describes in his video that he's come out and done over the last few days, to bring this out, aware, you know, make people in the public aware of what is going on and the new tactics that they are using and how they affect people's lives. Because this is bullying on a scale, you know, when you're stopping somebody earn money because they've got a view on a particular topic, you know, what you're doing is trying to corner the market with, you know, force. You're not using any more diplomacy. You know, that's bullying in its purest form. This needs to change, because for some people that aren't strong to stand up to this behaviour, you know, it can totally destroy their lives. You know, they can lose all the confidence, and you know, they can lose their jobs, which is what's happened already to a lot of people. And you know, this is the saddest thing, is that they can be driven to taking their own lives. We shouldn't have a society that has any part in this behaviour. And that's why, you know, I'm asking more people now not to be so passive with this behaviour. It needs to be nipped in the bud and dealt with. Now, when they put the energy prices up, yes, they made record profits. They made CO2 look like it was going to be achieved, because they want to achieve net zero here in the UK and Europe, I think, by 2030. So not only have they done that, so they've took more money out of people's pockets, but they've actually driven up every commodity on the cost of that commodity on the planet. It wasn't because people were earning more money and they were spending more, and that's what caused inflation. What's causing these inflation increases is these energy companies. They want to kill off the combustion engine car. And a friend of mine works at Jaguar Land Rover, and he was saying, he said, look, we're here at the moment, and this is a line, and we're just about to cross that line where we will no longer ever produce combustion engine cars. That is putting all your eggs in one basket, and I don't think it's a good idea to do that. That's how close, you know, just some industries have got now to moving completely over to, you know, renewables and green energy and that. And let's face it, if you are a smart individual, you'll work out that electric cars are not good for the environment. They're not good for countries that involve child labour to source the minerals to make the batteries, like the cobalt and the lithium. And, you know, they're a hazard on the environment. So when you're buying your electric vehicle, just remember these things. They're a hazard on the environment. If you have a look at the open cast mines where these minerals are being mined and the people that are doing it and the conditions that they're working in. If you can still get in that car and drive it, even to the shops, then you have already lost, in my opinion, your conscience. They're not good. Not only that, the actual labour and energy that goes into making these cars is like 3 times more. So you think, you know, your energy, you're saving the world through keeping it clean, through driving your car that doesn't put out any emissions. We've got diesel cars now that you could rub your din around the exhaust pipe that clean, and petrol engines that, you know, with the emissions and the catalytic converters that we've installed on these cars now, they're very clean. In a lot of cases, hydrogen is coming out the exhaust pipe, and water, which is a natural element in our atmosphere in any case. We're losing it on so many standpoints. Look what's happened in to the Danes. 3,000 farms have been forced to close by the government to cut emissions down because their emissions for that country are not meeting the current levels at this point in time for the European Union, or the United Nations, should I say. I mean, we've heard what they've said at Davos. You will have nothing and you'll be happy. Is that even a true? Could that statement ever be true? Have you ever seen somebody on the street that owns nothing be happy about living there in those conditions? It's crazy. You know, not only has the energy, you know, sent up other areas of industry's costs so that, you know, the end purchaser down the line has had to pay more for those things, but it's also now in the food industry. And listen to this, not only are the United Nations telling farmers they've got to shut their farms to meet these levels of CO2 achievements, but, you know, we're also losing land because of the natural occurring events like the magnetic pole reversal. It is a natural event. You know, this Earth does go through naturally reversals. Sometimes they're really rare. You know, the last excursion, if we want to talk, because I know people always hit me with this, oh yeah, but Gene, we had excursions 12,000 years ago. Still 12,000 years ago, we was just coming out the last glacial period at that point, and the numbers of human beings was not where they are today. They was significantly less. Again, what I want to say in this video, guys, is that we're starting to see, you know, people be witch hunted. Or, you know, like the Vikings were going after the pagans because they weren't Christians. We're starting to see this behaviour come back, and we should learn from our history because it's been well documented. You know, when you do this, you hurt people. You damage their lives when you go out for them because of what they've talked about. You know, we are intelligent, but what we need to stop doing is getting, you know, hurt by somebody's opinion because it don't fall in line with your agenda that you want to drive. And these rich and powerful people say, okay, well, I can still drive that agenda. I'll put it on every newspaper on the front page, or I'll have every, you know, broadcaster that works for any popular news company, you know, all follow and sing off the same hymn sheet. This is how we've got to this point where, you know, Al Gore has got away with saying back in 2014 that the world would have no ice caps by now. And I think I'll just leave you on that note and show you what the level of ice is right now on our planet. So if we just look at the sea ice extent from 2022, because we're just getting into the new year now and you can't really make any predictions on just a couple of weeks into the new year, and that red line is too small for, to be able to do that without zooming in significantly. But the yellow line above that, which has been close to that black dotted line for nearly all of 2022, and it has actually broke records going back to 2012. And what this means is that there is 3 million more square kilometres of ice over the Northern Hemisphere right now, and not one single mainstream organisation have brought that to anybody's attention. They're still driving this agenda where there'll be no ice, we'll kill all the polar bears, kids will never see snow again in their lives, they'll never know what snow was. This is the sort of thing that they give him a Nobel Peace Prize for, by the way. Can you believe? So, you know, like a lot of things, guys, if they are allowed to go out on a witch hunt for scientists, psychologists, you know, professional people that don't follow their, you know, these organisations' lines of news, well, I call it propaganda. It could call it a lot of other things, but if the lines are not followed, they go after the person. They'll take his salary off him. They'll take his licence off him, like they're trying to do with Jordan. You know, they will destroy his life, basically, because they cheat, and they don't like it when somebody goes out their way to try and stop them cheating, even if that comes at a bit of a sacrifice to us, because that's what people do that find themselves in terrible relationships. You know, even at their detriment, they will do something radical to beat the game that the person is playing against them. What we're dealing with is, as Jordan says, we are dealing with narcissists and psychopaths, and they're the ones that are ruining lives for millions and millions of people now on our planet. And we need to stick together if we're going to win, because to do nothing, well, you know what that will achieve. It will achieve nothing. We all need to stick together and support people like Jordan, support people like me on this channel and other channels that, you know, discuss these things and that go out their way to, you know, show you how the mechanics of these psychopaths and narcissists are working, so that you understand it, and not just do it in a way where you talk about it, present the evidence, because that's how you win an argument. So guys, I'll be back tomorrow with the poll, not the poll shift. I'll be on doing the latest poll position on the 17th. Tomorrow on the 16th, we'll get a look at some of the other anomalies that are going on in our world, and I'll just mention the link down there if you want to help support what we do at this observatory. It'd be nice to see a few people sticking together. You know, hopefully, you know, I've explained myself well enough for you to understand that that now needs to be more the case. We need to stick together more than ever, because they are winning this war against the people that are talking about these things in an alternative way, and it won't result in a good place for us further on down this road, and it hasn't already for a lot of people. So I'm asking, you know, for your support, and I'll say what I usually do, you know, take care as much as you can. I know it's difficult these days, for your loved ones, and as always, bye for now.